Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Masters of the Universe released more footage this weekend because of the Super Bowl and the Olympics with a couple more big Easter eggs, and the director, Travis Knight, also explained a lot of the choices they've made for the new live-action franchise of movies that they're launching, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Also, Mattel, please send me some free toys so I can give them away in my future videos. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do something like that. You cannot talk about a movie that is based on a toy line without talking about the toys that they're actually making for the movie itself. They've already started to release some of the designs too. You can see some of the packaging here. It basically looks like what you would expect it to look like. Speaking of which, though, you probably noticed in this new trailer footage they use more of the classic Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe theme music than they did during the previous trailers. Daniel Pemberton is doing the actual soundtrack for the new movie. He did the Spider-Verse movies. He's done a bunch of other stuff too, but most people more recently remember him from the Spider-Verse movies. But Travis Knight also did something similar with the Bumblebee movie. That's a really good template for this in terms of how they invoke a lot of the classic toy line theme music, original series, original movies, animation into the new live-action versions of stuff. So remember how much of the classic Transformers music and vibes, the Gen 1 vibes, he baked into the Bumblebee movie. It was a little more conservative at the time with how it invoked the classic Gen 1's Transformers, and it seems like, based on his recent interview for the Masters of the Universe live-action movie, he's actually since leaned way more into the classic Masters of the Universe than he did during the Bumblebee Transformers mythology. I think there have been enough big successes in the last 10 years in Hollywood that generally studios aren't as afraid to get as weird as possible. So if you've been a fan of the Masters of the Universe since the original toy line back in the 80s, way back at the very beginning, this is probably why you're seeing so many Easter eggs for the original toys, the original music, as well as some of the other bits of mythology from later series and later toy lines as well too. Even a couple Easter eggs for the live-action Masters of the Universe 1987 movie back in the day too. Generally, it seems like all the bits on Earth in the trailer are riffing on that classic 1987 movie because it took place on Earth. That was probably one of the biggest jokes about that 1987 movie, is that they just ran out of money so quickly that they had to find an excuse for He-Man to be running around a shopping mall for most of the movie. We are now finally getting to the era where they can actually pull off the special effects needed to do a traditional He-Man movie the way you would want to see it on Eternia with all the crazy designs. So I'm really hoping that we're only on Earth in the movie for the first 10-15 minutes before they all come back to Eternia. During his new interview, Travis Knight also dropped a whole bunch of details and knowledge about the movie too. He actually said one of the biggest things when he first came on the movie was that originally execs wanted Skeletor's face to just be a skeleton-looking face mask that Jared Leto wore, and he would just have Keldor's complete face through the entire movie to the present day of the universe. And Travis Knight was hard pass on that. Skeletor's face is already perfect. It has to be accurate to the original toy line and just be a pure skeleton under the hood. So for those of you wondering, because you only really see his face underneath the hood in the trailer in different ways, it's an actual full skeleton, they just use full CG. So unless they also do some Keldor flashbacks, I don't know if they're going to do that in the movie. They might save that for future sequels. If you only see him in Skeletor full form, you won't recognize him as Jared Leto. You won't see his face underneath the skeleton or anything like that. One of the other big new scenes they added in this version of the trailer was to put in He-Man's line as he calls out the chant, "I have the power," and transforms from Adam to He-Man. They also play a couple bars from the classic He-Man theme when he does that too. Travis Knight said that when they were actually casting a new He-Man, new Adam actor, he wasn't looking for another Dolph Lundgren, another real crazy, huge Arnold Schwarzenegger. He references Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger played Conan, and Conan was one of the two major inspirations of the Masters of the Universe toy line when they created it back in the day. He actually said that when he was looking to cast someone new, he was looking to cast a great Adam, and went on to say, "I was looking for a soul. I needed someone who had the spirit of the character and could be funny and charming and heartbreaking, and also plausible as a big action hero," meaning that he could get super swole and play the He-Man part of the character too convincingly, but also still pull off the Adam part of the character. It's sort of like a Batman Bruce Wayne kind of thing, where you look at different Batman actors across the era, and some of the versions are better Batman versus the other versions, and some are better Bruce Waynes than the other versions. Some of the more recent series have actually dug into this. The whole idea is that Adam is the real person, and He-Man is just the mask that he kind of puts on when he calls down the power.
See, the sword is just the conduit, but the spark, that was always me.
So part of the idea when they were casting the new version of this live-action Adam and He-Man actor is they wanted to find someone who was a great Adam because he's going to be Adam for like most of the movie, it seems like. We'll see how they deal with this in sequels, but it seems like he doesn't transform into actual He-Man for the first time, and it is for the first time till a little bit later in the film when he gets back to Castle Grayskull and gets the Power Sword. Travis Knight also said a couple funny things about Skeletor too, because obviously Jared Leto is playing Skeletor. He said that they didn't actually go out to seek him and want him to play the role. Jared Leto came to them asking to play Skeletor because he had his own special history with the character. So what does this mean? Wait a minute, Jared Leto has a special relationship with Skeletor. It makes more sense when you actually think about how old Jared Leto is. He's in his early 50s. He would have been about 11 or 12 years old when the original Masters of the Universe toy line came out, so he was probably just a super big fanboy of Skeletor when they first introduced the toys. This is how long the toy line has been around. Idris Elba is another good example of this too. He said that he wanted to play Man-at-Arms because when he was a little kid, he was also about 11, 12 years old when the original toy line came out. He was a huge fan of that character. So when you think about it, these two older guys were actually like the perfect age, like the target age for Mattel when they were trying to release the toys back in the day. Don't you now feel so much older? What it seems like they're doing in the new live-action franchise of movies is they're going with a Bumblebee-style plot, because this is Travis Knight doing the movie again, too. So remember, the Bumblebee movie started out with a big flashback on Cybertron, then you jump to the present day of the movie, probably doing something similar with Masters of the Universe, where you get the flashback to explain Skeletor attacking Castle Grayskull, Eternia, and Adam's mother, Queen Marlena the Sorceress, sending young Adam to Earth to protect him, and then the movie jumps forward in time to show you what his life on Earth has turned into, and I'm assuming that Marlena's family back on Earth probably raised him. Canonically, his mother is an astronaut from Earth that fell through a portal into Eternia, where King Randor met her, they get married, she becomes his queen, and they eventually have Adam and Adora. More on She-Ra in a second, because yes, I totally think if the movie is successful, they'll try to introduce She-Ra and Hordak in the second film. It just makes too much sense that he defeats Skeletor at the end of the movie, and then they introduce the power behind Skeletor, like who's worse than Skeletor but his original master, Hordak, and who comes along with Hordak but his sister, Adora. So maybe post-credit scene with Hordak or with She-Ra or with both of them. There are a billion different Easter eggs in the trailer, especially in the toy store, in the drawings around his bedroom. They make it seem like he doesn't fully remember his time on Eternia, but he starts drawing things that he does remember. And in the toy store, there are these actual classic Mattel Masters of the Universe toys and concept designs that either never got released or got changed when they first released them, like early He-Man toys and other Mattel toys based on Mark Taylor's designs, like Torak here, in the Big Jim Battle Cat Easter eggs. And of course the massive Conan-looking version of He-Man, which looks more like Conan than it does like classic He-Man.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
This is all real fascinating lore from real life, and especially if you're really into toy collecting. Originally, when they were creating the Masters of the Universe toy line, Mattel's first designs looked too much like actual Conan the Barbarian, and Mattel didn't have an actual copyright for that, so they had to change it into what became the classic He-Man designs that you remember. But a really big part of toy manufacturing in real life is repurposing old toy lines into totally different toys that can sell better, and something that's called kit bashing, where regular people and big toy manufacturers a lot of times too will develop prototypes for new toys, action figures, using different bits of other pre-existing toys that maybe aren't selling as well anymore. So when Mattel was creating the Masters of the Universe toy line back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, they had already created a line of toys called Big Jim, which was unsuccessful, so they had all these tons and tons of unsold Big Jim toys and accessories. The cat from that toy line was repurposed into Cringer and Battle Cat, which is why you see a bunch of actual real-life Big Jim toys in the background of this toy store. Those are actual toys that you could have gone out into a store and bought back in the late 70s, early 80s. Some of you actually told me in the comments on my last Masters of the Universe video that you did own some of those original Big Jim toys back in the late 1970s. Most of this stuff you can also find on eBay and other reseller websites too. Like, you can actually still go buy this stuff. I think what the movie is trying to say, though, that in the present day of this Earth in the movie, there's a version of Mattel that does exist, like a toy company that develops their own Masters of the Universe toy line because of either Adam himself comes up with the designs, but the gag is that they're based on his real-life memories, or someone connected to him, like from his mother's family, who knows that Eternia is a real place and remembers all these designs. And this is why there's a version of the Masters of the Universe toy line in mythology on their Earth that exists, but then you also have the real version of Teela, the real version of Skeletor and his minions that come for Adam on Earth. Like, wait a minute, it's all real. My assumption, though, is that Adam is the only person who believes that it's real, but he doesn't fully remember everything from his childhood. So that's why he's not completely sure about it until Teela and Skeletor's minions show up on Earth. Like, oh, that's right, this is real. My assumption is that at some point in the present day of the movie, like the very beginning of the film, Skeletor finds out that Adam is on Earth and finds a way to get there and get him, and he needs him in order to get the power of Grayskull for some reason. We'll see how the movie explains that, but that's also probably why Teela comes to Earth to yoink him and bring him back so that he can actually get the real power sword back on Eternia and take up the power and fulfill his destiny of becoming He-Man. There's still a couple of questions about how they're invoking some of the classic mythology and like separating him from the power sword and how he eventually learns about that and then calls down the power for the first time. But I do believe when we see him calling down the power in the trailer, that's the first time that he's ever actually done it, ever actually transformed into He-Man. Most of the trailers make it seem like the actual final battle is inside Castle Grayskull, which makes sense. Like, that's the whole idea. Skeletor has been trying to get the power of Grayskull this whole time, and he finally at some point breaks in and is almost about to get the power until He-Man is able to stop him. That's basically what this giant battle is, where he's wielding the power sword against the Havoc staff. There's a separate shot of Skeletor in the mouth of the entrance to Snake Mountain, which is probably from earlier in the movie though, but it does seem like in a couple bits of the film, you see them go to the different places, like you see them go to Snake Mountain, and then obviously later go to Castle Grayskull. For the most part, it seems like all the classic characters from the toy line are in the movie in some way. Orko is like the big missing one. He's nowhere on the wiki, nowhere on the IMDb. I'm assuming they're saving him for a later trailer, or maybe they'll just save him for the actual movie as like a big surprise. But there's no way that Travis Knight would make such a stink about being accurate to the original toy line, especially with Skeletor, and then not be accurate to a character like Orko. There are a couple of characters they haven't talked too much about, like Roboto here is voiced by Kristen Wiig. She's a relatively big actress, but they haven't mentioned that yet. And because Idris Elba is playing Man-at-Arms and Camila Mendes is playing Teela, and she's Brazilian, and he is obviously nowhere near being Brazilian, that the backstory they're going with for Teela is more accurate to the original mythology that they created for the toy line in the Filmation series. During that, she was just adopted by Man-at-Arms as a baby, and she's only the biological daughter of the sorceress who had to give her up when she became the next sorceress, and the sorceress and Man-at-Arms were never actually together as a couple. Morena Baccarin, who's playing the sorceress in this movie, is also Brazilian, like Camila Mendes, so it actually makes a little more sense. Like, oh yeah, she actually looks like she could be Morena Baccarin's daughter. Canonically, each different era has a different sorceress, and they'll just pass the title down to a successor. The original sorceress was the wife of King Grayskull, and eventually, the idea is the prophecy is that Teela will become the next sorceress at some point. I'm assuming if the live-action film franchise is successful and they do a couple sequels, maybe they'll get into this in the later sequels at some point, but it feels like it's a long ways off. What it feels like the movie is doing, at least at first, is they're going mostly with the original lore from the toy line and the comics that were introduced with those original toys. Then in the sequels, they'll roll in more lore, like Skeletor being Prince Keldor and his connection to Randor and Adam, being Adam's uncle, basically. And I'm assuming there'll only be light Easter eggs for Hordak, the Horde, and She-Ra in this first film. In true form, lawyers always ruin everything. There's a big rights problem with She-Ra in animation when it comes to Masters of the Universe just in general, because Mattel does not have the rights solely to animated She-Ra. So way back when they created the character, they did it in partnership with Filmation and gave sole animated rights to them forever. Filmation then got bought out by DreamWorks, which is why DreamWorks was able to do their own Netflix She-Ra series without any help from anybody else, and Kevin Smith was not allowed to use She-Ra during his Masters of the Universe Netflix series. There was like a little teaser for her at the very end, but they couldn't show her on screen, and they couldn't visually confirm her as She-Ra, but that's basically who it was at the end of Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe run. It was She-Ra showing up to fix Hordak.
To destroy Skeletor. And this He-Man.
When it comes to live action, though, I don't think that Mattel has any of the weird rights issues with She-Ra. I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but I think there's nothing stopping them from doing live action She-Ra and Hordak in the second or the third movie, depending on how they want to pace this out. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you spotted any Easter eggs or references in the trailers that I didn't talk about in my video or my previous videos, just let me know in the comments. What'll probably happen as we get closer to the movie coming out, they'll start releasing more story-based trailers. We'll see more of the characters and figure out more of what's actually going on during the film. So I'll do more videos as they do release more footage. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. In related news, we started to get more footage of Henry Cavill's Highlander film. Click here for that, and click here for all my Masters of the Universe videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.